Mobile gaming.
So your brain doesn't fucking work. You idiot. You're honestly an idiot. I don't know what's wrong with you.
Okay. On a more serious note, for as notorious as mobile games have become, I think it would be unfair to totally discard them. The fact that within the past 20 years or so, we went from flip phones that could just barely manage to play Uno to smartphones that can nowadays play fully fledged AAA titles is pretty incredible when you sit down and think about it. Though, for as incredible as those gains have been, mobile games have become common with the free-to-play, pay-to-win, false advertising garbage that a lot of games in this category fall into. I'm willing to bet that at some point you've seen an advertisement for a mobile game and rolled your eyes at it because you had a hunch that what was being advertised on the screen wasn't the actual game, or that the game was pay to win. Very rarely is there a mobile game that you can truly sit down and enjoy. The mobile game market is filled with so much shovelware and falsely marketed games that finding truly enjoyable experiences has become much more difficult. It's a lot more difficult nowadays to find a mobile game where I can pull out my phone, boot the game up, enjoy it without needing to pay for anything and without needing to grind my ass off, and have it be a game that I can return to for quick play sessions here and there when the situation and time calls for it. Which leads me to the mobile game series that you've probably never heard of. The Bad to Bad series is a game series that I came across by total chance. Around 2 years ago or so, I was browsing through the Google Play Store, bored and thinking that I would just do some window shopping to see what's out there without thinking I'd come across anything of note. That's when, in the recommended games bar, I came across the first game in the Bad to Bad series, Bad to Bad Delta. Now, I'm going to be fully honest in saying that the reason I was so interested in this game when I first came across it was because of the anthropomorphic animals in military uniforms. Something about anthropomorphic animals being soldiers in an organized and effective military fighting force has always intrigued me. So, when I saw a game doing just that by the looks of it, I downloaded it. Without going into details about it just yet, I enjoyed the game enough to download the next main entry in the series, Bad to Bad Extinction. I enjoyed Extinction enough that I'm now actively looking forward to the release of Bad to Bad Apocalypse in September, if all goes well, according to the developers of the game. But enough about my personal journey of discovering and playing through the series. I'm here to take a look at what each of the games in the series has to offer, and why I think that the Bad to Bad games are among the legitimately enjoyable games in the mobile game market. The Bad to Bad series is developed by Dawnstone, I hope I pronounced that name right, a South Korean indie game studio who specializes in making 2D action games. Along with the two main Bad to Bad games, they also have 3 other games to their credit as of this video, those being Bad to Bad Tango, King's Blood the Defense, and Milicola the Lord of Soda. In case you're wondering, no, I am not making that last title up. For this video though, I'll be focusing on the 2 main Bad to Bad games as well as briefly talk about the spin-off Bad to Bad game that has been pulled from all app stores as of this video, Bad to Bad Tango. Let's begin with Bad to Bad Delta. Bad to Bad Delta is the first game in the series featuring a tug-of-war style of combat where you and your enemy begin on opposite ends of the battlefield, with the ultimate goal being to push back the main enemy and to take them out. On paper, it sounds like this style of combat doesn't have a lot of depth to it, but there are a number of additions to spice the gameplay formula up. The first of these additions is in being able to pick your main character. By default, you start with Lieutenant Colonel Pan the Panda, armed with a standard assault rifle. rifle. But you can use in-game currency or real money if you wish to purchase other squad mates to take them into battle. Each squad mate has their own exclusive weapon that cannot be swapped out. For example, like I said earlier, Lieutenant Colonel Pan has a standard assault rifle, that being a Mark 18 Mod 0. Captain Ratty has an MP5 SD. Master Sergeant Boomer has an M32 MGL. Staff Sergeant James has a Chaytak M200, aka the Intervention. Just to give a few examples. Remaining on the note of these characters, one thing that I have to commend Bad to Bad Delta for is that each of the characters seem to be viable to use. While there may be better characters to bring into the fight more than others, from my experience, depending on your preference, your preferred style of play will still be viable. This makes it so that there aren't any blatantly overpowered characters or any sort of pay-to-win characters that just has you holding down the firing button to win. Speaking of holding down the firing button to win, that may sound like what the core gameplay loop is here. Have your character go forward or backward depending on what's happening, and hold the firing button to win. While you do have to do those things to win, there's a little more to it than that. When you're in the middle of a fight, you'll see this row of equipment and characters show up during it. Things like medkits, grenades, ammo, and additional units to call in as reinforcements. These all show up randomly in this row to give you the necessary help in order to win the fight, as while the enemy doesn't have access to medkits, they do have access to their own reinforcements to aid them in the fight. During the fight, if two or more of the same kind of reinforcements or equipment boxes are paired together, the boxes will turn yellow, indicating that whatever kind of equipment or reinforcements you have are stronger. For example, a standalone grenade will deal a little bit of damage, but if you match up to 3 grenade boxes back to back to back, that grenade you throw will deal a lot more damage. For the pieces of equipment, they can go up to level 3. Once 3 of the same equipment are together, the chain ends. Even if a 4th piece of the same equipment arrives, an entirely new chain will start. For the reinforcements, it's a little different. When you start a chain of reinforcements, they evolve from their previous levels. What I mean by that is, the start of the reinforcement chain is standard infantry. Level 2 is an infantry fighting vehicle. Level 3 is a tank, level 4 is a helicopter, and level 5 is an airstrike. The airstrike is something to especially take note of, as if you chain 5 reinforcement blocks together, the airstrike is added into its own separate box that you can tap at any time to call it in. To balance out the game, these reinforcements are able to be destroyed with just your standard weapons, which means yes, you can destroy something like a main battle tank or an attack helicopter with something like a Mark 18 Mod 0, a Scar H, or an MP5 to give a couple of examples in this game. Unrealistic? Yes. But balanced? Also yes. With how often these reinforcements get called in, especially during intense battles where there's a lot of back and forth going on as the fight goes on, needing to pull out a rocket launcher, rely on ammo boxes or pickups on the field for those rockets, or just relying on your reinforcements when those reinforcement boxes are RNG based, would result in plenty of situations where the fight could get heavily one-sided. As a result, you need to be able to deal with these menacing threats like this in order for the game to flow as well as it does. There's also a fury state in this game that's measured by this bar just above the equipment and reinforcement boxes. As your allies get taken out and as you take damage, this bar will slowly but surely fill up. Once the bar gets to 100%, the fury state is activated as you get a free airstrike that's automatically called in, and the rate at which you get those equipment and reinforcement boxes is sped up drastically. It can be a bit much at times to keep up and coordinate how you plan to pair up the different boxes together during your fury state, but it is such a satisfying feeling to be able to use so much equipment and call in so many reinforcements in such a short amount of time. As you progress further in the game, the enemies you come across will gradually get stronger and stronger, which brings us to upgrading your units. In this game, your currency is money, or as it's called in this game, Bay. One thing that I'm kinda iffy on with this game is the way in which it represents the money you have. It can be a little weird. Rather than leaning on the usual way money is represented with K's and M's representing thousands and millions, Bad to Bad Delta chooses to represent the money with other letters. The further down the alphabet you go, the more money you have. For example, 800C Bay is less than 2D Bay. I'm guessing that's the equivalent of saying that $800,000 is less than $2 million? Ultimately though, I was still able to work with it just fine, as I ultimately just looked at the letter first to see if I even had enough to begin with, then I looked at the numbers after that. With enough time, you'll be able to understand the system as well, but I do wonder what made Dawnstone choose this way of representing the money. The more Bay you have, the more you're able to spend it on acquiring new squad mates and vehicles and upgrading the ones you already have. For the various squad mates, they can be upgraded through simply playing as them on the field. As they level up, each of the characters are given various permanent stat boosts. Speaking of those stats, each of the squad mates as well as the vehicles have 5 different stat bars that represent the amount of health that they have, the damage they can produce, how accurate they are, their rate of fire, and their speed. For the infantry and vehicles, rather than relying on time deployed, you upgrade the infantry and vehicles through buying those upgrades. Those upgrades are increases in health and damage, or in the case of the fighter jet you choose for airstrikes, just the damage. A thing to note about the infantry and vehicles, they do cost money to deploy, but when their free trial of living expires, you get more money back as compensation. The compensation given is more than the deployment cost, ensuring that you'll never be in a situation where you're too broke to call in reinforcements. Bad to Bad Delta also has a story, although for some reason it never played any of the cutscenes aside from the last mission cutscenes when I was recording the gameplay for this review. It's a pretty basic story in the grand scheme of things. You play as various members of the B2B or Bad to Bad squad led by Lieutenant Colonel Pan as you're set on various missions against the terrorist group Al-Qatala. Wait a minute. Why does that name sound familiar? You know, Activision did recently get busted for blatantly stealing an artist's artwork for one of their skin bundles. Makes me wonder if they stole the name Al-Qatala from this game to put it in Modern Warfare 2019. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. So you go around eliminating the Al-Qatala forces until you eventually end up eliminating the leader of the group himself. Also, there's the plot of one of the members from Pan's previous team he led in the intro of this game, Sergeant First Class Bayo, betraying the Bad to Bad team in the US to fight alongside Al-Qatala, although it's never really fleshed out why he does it. It just feels like he's there to have a betrayal and some form of rivalry, and it doesn't really work too well from a storytelling standpoint. Not only do we not get invested in Bayo in any way to make his betrayal have any emotion or meaning behind it, it also just doesn't make any sense. We don't get an explanation as to his motives, he just kinda hit the change team button and that's it. Anyway, after the Bad to Bad team eliminates the leader of Al-Qatala, where the leader did the big there's a hole that leads to a secret underground facility of some kind where it turns out humans are down there. The Bad to Bad team is sent down to face off against someone who has a very striking resemblance to a certain piece of shit garbage human being who recently got his Mar-a-Lago home raided, and they have him commit with the body receiving an autopsy and being tossed into the sea. The Bad to Bad team is now left to put the pieces to the puzzle together as the human species has now been revealed as their newest enemy. There are 4 other modes that you can check out here after the campaign. The second mode available, titled Campaign Bayo, is a campaign where you play as Bayo after he switches sides. There isn't any story here though, it's just being able to play the game from Al-Qatala's point of view and hunting down the various members of the Bad to Bad team until Bayo eventually faces off against himself in the final level? Shit, now I don't know what's more confusing, this campaign or Black Ops 3's campaign.
Train go boom.
The third mode, Hero, is a hero versus villains kind of mode where the reinforcements you would normally get are replaced by heroes. The reinforcements are swapped out for main characters in the game, and the enemy is able to call in the villains of the game as their reinforcements. The fourth mode, Hunt, is an infinite mode where various high-value targets, aka the enemy bosses in the game, show up and you get rewarded Bay for taking them out. This is the mode that can help out excellently with leveling up characters and getting more Bay to purchase new squad mates and upgrade the reinforcements. The fifth and last mode is called Alpha, where you face off against additional members of the Bad to Bad team, as I presume the context here is that you're there to free them from some sort of brainwashing that took place. At least that's the kind of vibe that I get from the picture here anyway. How you rescue the team by filling them with bullet holes is something I can't figure out, but hey, video game logic. Overall, Bad to Bad Delta is a very enjoyable experience that has quite a lot of content when you step back and look at everything. A single-player campaign along with 4 additional modes, different squad mates and reinforcements to buy and upgrade, and an enjoyable core gameplay loop that doesn't force you into a pay-to-win situation or ask you to grind your ass off for weeks and weeks and weeks, thanks to modes like the Hero and Hunt mode that can serve as good Bay collecting modes. If you're looking for a good game on mobile, I would strongly recommend this game. Before we take a look at the next main game in the Bad to Bad series, I want to quickly take a look at the spin-off game Bad to Bad Tango. For one reason or another, it has been pulled from all mobile stores by the looks of it. When I looked it up in the Google Play Store, I was shown the 2 main games, and that was it. No Bad to Bad Tango. So I can only go off of what I've seen in YouTube videos, so take what I say here with a grain of salt, more so for the things that I may miss when it comes to the details of this game. Bad to Bad Tango doesn't have a story or any additional modes outside of its core gameplay loop. The main gameplay loop is that you play as one of the main characters, as your task is to climb as high as you can in the sky. The higher you go, the larger the score is. You have to avoid flying vehicles such as helicopters and jets, or else the game is over. Or if you fall below the indicated limit, the game is over as well. The way you increase your altitude in this game is by firing the weapon you have while making sure to time it right so that you don't fire the weapon while it's pointed upward to avoid being shot down instead of up. As you gain coins from playing rounds, you're able to unlock new characters, and that's about it from what I saw on YouTube. Again, I'm probably missing out on a good number of details here since I haven't played Bad to Bad Tango myself, but I did want to briefly talk about it in this video since I'm talking about the Bad to Bad series as a whole in this video. Bad to Bad Extinction is the second main entry in the Bad to Bad series and is easily the best game so far. Bad to Bad Delta is still a very enjoyable game, but Extinction totally changes the core gameplay loop and introduces a lot of new things that ultimately add to the player experience. The first of these new changes and additions is the story. Rather than the story being a pretty basic fight against terrorists, this time there's a lot more to it. Continuing from the ending of Bad to Bad Delta, Extinction begins by setting the premise that the human species, known as the Tailless Legion, has been making their big moves after they were discovered by the Bad to Bad team in the previous game. Their first move is a devastating one, launching a missile loaded with a deadly virus known as the Wilding virus into the active war zone of Syria. Zombies, or Wilders as they're called in this game, begin to rise and take the area over. In the midst of this zombie outbreak, Major Pan and the others of the Bad to Bad team are on a mission to find the Tailless Legion's headquarters and stop their anti-animal biological missiles, or AABMs for short, from launching. Simply put, humans want anthropomorphic animals off the map, wishing to be at the top of the food chain once again. Now, this is already a much better premise than your typical, hey, go eliminate those terrorists over there, plot. But what I really like about this plot is that there's more to it than that here. In Bad to Bad Delta, you had some things like characters bantering with one another and an ultimate end goal to the story, but it never really felt as fleshed out as it otherwise could have been. Here in Bad to Bad Extinction, along the way, you get a bit of world building where you see the main characters of the story have some more of that banter between each other. Through some dialogue, you pick up on how humanity used to be at the top of the food chain and are now wishing to be the dominant species once again, leading us to wonder how these anthropomorphic animals dethroned humanity in that regard. There are more moments in the campaign that'll keep you alert as there are more twists and turns this time as the story develops. You even get some lore into why the Bad to Bad squad was created and discover that the reasoning for its creation may not be so black and white. I like this story so much that, as painful as it is for me to do this, I'm going to refrain from spoiling this game's story and its ending. I feel that Bad to Bad Extinction has made such big strides in its story that it's one you should experience for yourself. And for those of you who have a keen attention to detail, you are right when you assume that the rest of the game is great too if I'm already recommending that you go and play it. So let's move on from the story and go on to the gameplay. Extinction is still a 2D action game, but here we're doing a lot more than just moving left and right. Now, along with moving left and right, we can move up and down. Now, I know what some of you may be thinking. You're really going to give praise to a game that allows you to move on the Y-axis as well now? Yeah, I am. For as simple as this gameplay change is, in combination with the other gameplay changes to complement it, this addition allows for a whole new level of mobility and scale. This gives you the opportunity to explore more ground, go into buildings, make it to other points of interest, compared to the previous game where the best we got was a change in scenery as we kept moving left and right. To go along with the ability to move up and down, just like how my mood swings do when my brain reminds me of my failures, no, we're not going to talk about that, we're moving on. The way that combat works in this game is different different too. Starting off with the basics, the way that you attack enemies is by getting them in front of you and either letting the game do the firing for you, or you manually fire depending on what control scheme you're using. You've got your dodge left and right buttons to roll out of the way of attacks, and you've got your grenade button where you can carry up to 2 of them and they act on a recharge timer. That's the core gameplay loop. Make sure to keep the enemy in your line of fire, fire away, and you've got the basic abilities and equipment like rolls and grenades. So that's the basic stuff. Time to move on to the meat and potatoes of how the combat has been expanded in this game. Firstly, you're now able to pick your weapons for each character. While characters do have their canon weapons, aka their preferred ones, you're totally free to pick any character and weapon combo you wish. No longer are you restricted to a certain weapon that's based on the character you pick. Whatever primary weapons you think best fit you and your squad is up to you. Yes, you heard me right. You and your squad. You're now able to take up to 3 dedicated squad mates along with either a ground or aerial drone to accompany you in missions. This serves to replace the reinforcements mechanic that the previous game had. While on paper, it may not sound as cool that you aren't calling in tanks, helicopters, airstrikes, etc. In Extinction, it becomes a masterful art of building together the perfect squad as you figure out what weapons and gear go together for each squad mate, making sure they can fulfill their roles perfectly. And you'll be needing that full squad to help you out, as enemies will be fighting as squads as well. The remaining squad mates controlled by the AI can do some serious damage. Your squad mates will stick with a good medium range for assault rifles, your squad mates will get up close and personal with a shotgun, your squad mates will stay back as best they can with a sniper rifle, etc. Your squad mates are also smart enough to know when to retrieve armor and health when those pickups drop on the floor as well. In other words, the other 3 squad mates you pick can easily handle themselves in the fighting. Along with being able to pick your squad mates and the weapons they have, you're also able to choose attachments for the weapons and specific pieces of gear for them. The attachments for the weapons give stat boosts to them, such as increased range, increased accuracy, and more. The gear gives stat boosts such as a higher health pool for armor before it breaks, increased space in the collective backpack everyone has to carry those weapons and attachments gathered from missions, increased movement speed, and more. This also means that each character having their own unique stats is nowhere to be found here, as it's up to you on what their stats are like with the equipment and weapons you give them. Fourthly, each of these weapons, attachments, and gear have different rarities. Now, to some, this may be sounding like a big red alert. This would be the perfect recipe for disaster where the developers would make the game pay to win to get the best gear. Thankfully, Dawnstone opted to create a delicious recipe for success, as this game is not in any way pay to win. Yeah, there are a few epic weapons and pieces of armor that you can purchase if you want to get a head start, but the natural progression of the game is excellent. The rarities go from common, special, rare, epic, legendary, and legendary plus. You start out with common and special gear at the beginning, then as you progress further in the game, you find yourself getting those rares, epics, and legendaries. This is thanks to the excellently paced progression system, which is a brilliant sight to see given how often mobile games fall into the pay-to-win category. When you're ready to go out on a mission, you tap the icon of the helicopter to deploy, where you then pick the zone you'll enter. As you progress further in the game, more of these zones will become available. I also want to note how the progression of the enemies in this game works well too. The first zone is where you'll be facing against primarily wilders, who are the easiest enemies in the game to eliminate, allowing new players to get settled in with the game before they face off against the other factions that have increasingly better weapons and gear. When you deploy, you'll have a list of submissions you can complete in order to make the progress bar of the zone fill up. Complete enough submissions and the main target will be unlocked. If you're able to eliminate the main target, you get a big percentage increase in that zone. As you reach percentage milestones, more story cutscenes will play, and this cycle continues for each zone until you reach 100%, where the boss of that zone becomes available to fight. You eliminate the boss, and that zone is now done, with the next zone being unlocked. In each of the zones, there's also a countdown timer that indicates how much time is left before darkness falls. It's strongly advised that you get out of dodge before nighttime arrives, as the wilders in the area receive massive stat boosts during this time. Unless you have more powerful weapons and gear, it's best to board the helicopter and to get out of there before then. But if you want to get the maximum amount of profit from a zone by completing all of the side missions and eliminating the main target, then you'll need to engage in that risk-reward system where you'll be risking it all, but the increased rewards for if you make it out alive will be great. Along with the 5 main zones in the game, there are also 3 additional zones that are endgame modes that serve as the post-main game content. These are the Kill, Raid, and Winter zones. The Kill zone is where you can deploy to, well, kill enemies. This is where you face off against purely the toughest enemy in the game, the humans of the Tailless Legion, but this zone allows for tons of coins and gear to be collected in the process. This is essentially the game's money and gear collecting mode, so you can continue to make your squad the best it can be post-main game. The Raid Zone is a mode that allows you to fight the various bosses of the game, but the bosses themselves are much harder this time around. As a trade-off for the bosses being much harder, you get loot for successfully defeating a boss. The more difficult the boss, the better the loot. And lastly, the Winter Zone, the Battle Royale mode. It's as simple as Battle Royales get. Drop in, pick up weapons and gear, and fight to be the last one standing. What's interesting about this mode is that Battle Royale games have never really been my cup of tea. I've only ever played a few matches of Bad to Bad Extinction's Battle Royale mode before this video, and that was like a year and a half ago if I had to guess when. I have never played Black Ops 4's Blackout, I have never played Battlefield 5's Firestorm, I have never played Warzone, I haven't even played a single game of Fortnite. You can add in all the handsome and hot furry men you want, Fortnite, I'm not going to budge. Remove the skill-based matchmaking so that I can actually have fun in the game in the future, and I'll happily download the game and immediately get to work on unlocking Meowscles and Fennecs so I can play as both of them. No, you may not ask why those two characters in particular. We're moving on. Bad to Bad Extinction's Battle Royale mode? I will admit, I could see the appeal during the couple of games I played for this video. It's a matter of finding as many buildings and equipment boxes as you can in order to get a good loadout going right away. After that, you keep fighting and scavenging until you either win or die trying. I saw the appeal of Battle Royale modes here. Will I start playing Battle Royales outside of Bad to Bad Extinction regularly though? Probably not, no. But I am still grateful and happy for the experience that this game's Battle Royale mode provided for me, and I would recommend that you check this mode out if you decide to download this game. For as infamous as mobile gaming has become, there are those games in the market that are truly enjoyable experiences. I was lucky enough to not just receive one of those experiences on my phone, but two of them. And if all goes well, I'll be able to experience another well-put-together mobile game in
sometime later than September for regions outside of Korea.
If you haven't played these games already, which I'm assuming you haven't given the title of this video after all, then I would strongly suggest that you give these games a try. I never expected to talk about a mobile game series on this channel, let alone a mobile game at all. I'll be completely honest here, this video was more of a spontaneous idea after seeing Dawnstone's tweet about how Bad to Bad Apocalypse is scheduled for a September release. I saw the tweet, then I thought to myself, I could totally make a video about the previous games in the series in preparation for this game's release. And so, this video just kinda happened. On the off chance that there are people watching this video who have played these games before, first of all, thank you so much for making it to the end. I am eternally grateful. Secondly, what do you think of these games? Do you agree or disagree with my thoughts on the games? Did you spot something about the games that I perhaps didn't? Or actually, you know what? Has anyone watching this video played Bad to Bad Tango by chance? If so, how is that game? I know I talked about it in this video, but I could only briefly talk about it since I couldn't play it. So if by chance there is someone watching who has played that game, I'd love to read on what it's like. With that being said, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and leave a like, drop a comment, and if video game reviews and essays are a type of content you enjoy here on YouTube, be sure to hit the subscribe button and be sure to hit the bell icon to receive all notifications for future uploads. Until next time, this is Thunderous Fulf, signing off.